Okay, so debt collection. I know not exactly a fun way to spend some time, right? But after you shared that video with me, the one by Walter Lari, the debt expert
Right.
in Italy,
Right.
talking about aggressive collection tactics, well, let's just say it made me think twice. And that phone call, the one he plays in the video, yikes, definitely made my palms sweat a little.
Yeah, it's intense for sure. And Laurie's advice is spot on because he actually used to work in debt collection himself. He's seen it all firsthand.
Wow.
But the thing is, those really aggressive tactics in that video, those are way more common than people realize.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And it all boils down to psychology. Straight up manipulation, really.
See, that's what gets to me listening to that guy on the phone. It's like they know exactly what buttons to push to get you to crack. Even just watching it, I felt this like wave of panic, and I'm not even the one on the phone. Laurie even called it aggressive right there in the title. And I mean, yeah, the collector's tone is definitely aggressive, but then he throws in all that legal jargon on top of it.
Yeah, it's like a 1-2 punch meant to totally throw you off balance.
Yeah.
Want you to feel anxious, scared even. Because when we feel that way, we don't think as clearly. We're way more likely to just react impulsively.
Yeah.
And that's when they get you, you end up agreeing to something you wouldn't otherwise, just to make that awful feeling go away.
It's like they're trying to shut down your brain before you can even process what's happening. And the language itself, like Laurie points out all these phrases, rescission of contract, legal action, every other word. It's something about your credit reporting. It's like they're lobbing grenades but trying to sound casual about it.
Exactly. And those phrases, they carry a ton of weight. They're meant to tap into some really basic fears: financial ruin, judgment from other people, the shame that comes with debt. For so many people, it's all designed to make you just want to get them off your back, even if it means agreeing to something that's really not good for you in the long run.
Which is exactly what Laurie warns about, right? Don't make promises you can't keep. I mean, when you're already in a tough financial spot, it's got to be so tempting to just say whatever it takes to get them off the phone.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the trap, isn't it? Because when you make a promise under that kind of pressure and then you can't follow through, well, now you're in an even worse position. It gives them more to hold over your head later on. And sometimes the pressure goes way beyond just words.
Oh, right. Like in that call Laurie plays, the collector actually threatens to send an essatore. I had to link that one up. It basically means a debt collector, right?
It does, yeah. But essatore in Italian, it has a much different feel. Like it conjures up a much more, well, intimidating kind of figure. Wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Like enforcer sounds way closer to the mark than collections agent.
Right. And then to really turn up the heat, he mentions sending this essatore, or even worse, a bailiff, straight to the person's house.
Okay, see, that's where I'd start to freak out a little. Just hearing that, even secondhand, sets off alarm bells. Is that even legal? Can they really just show up at your door like that because of a debt?
That's the question, isn't it? And that takes us straight into the legal side of things, because what debt collectors can and can't actually do, well, it depends a lot on where you live and the specific kind of debt we're talking about.
So just because they say they're sending someone over doesn't necessarily mean they can actually do it.
Exactly. And that's what we'll dig into when we come back, separating fact from fiction when it comes to a debt collector's power.
Yeah, that is a relief, knowing there are legal limits. But I don't know, it's still kind of scary to think about someone showing up at your door because of a debt. Like, how often does that actually happen? Can they really just, legally do that?
Yeah, good question. Thankfully, it's usually not as dramatic as they make it sound. Like, you don't need to worry about some guy in a pinstripe suit showing up with a battering ram or anything. In most places, that kind of thing just isn't allowed. They can't just barge into your home demanding payment, right? There are rules in place, regulations that specifically cover how and when debt collectors can contact you.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better. But it sounds like there are some gray areas, right? What about those more intense things Laurie was talking about, like using the word essatore and threatening to send a bailiff to your house? Should people actually be worried about that kind of thing?
You're right, there are some nuances here, and it really highlights how much power words have, especially when it comes to debt collection. We talked about how essatore is the Italian word for debt collector, right? But it definitely has a different feel to it when you say it. Like, it just sounds scarier, right? More serious.
Yeah, way more. For some reason, enforcer comes to mind a lot faster than, like collections agent or whatever.
It's true. And even though essatore is specific to Italy, the idea of using language to intimidate people, well, that's universal, right? And then on top of that, he throws in the word bailiff, which, okay, a bailiff is an officer of the court, And they might have the power to, take your stuff if you owe money. But even then, there's a process, a legal procedure they have to follow. It's not like they can just show up at your house unannounced because some debt collector told them to.
So basically, knowing what your rights are is super important, right? Like what's actually legal where you live makes a big difference. So let's say, hypothetically, a debt collector does show up at your door. Are you required to talk to them?
Well, here's the good news. In most cases, you are not obligated to speak to a debt collector who comes knocking. Like, you can literally just not engage. You are well within your rights to just tell them to leave your property. And if they refuse, you can even call the police.
Okay, no slamming the door in their face. Got it. But seriously, even if I never have to use it, it just feels better knowing that I have that option. It's kind of empowering, right? Like, you're not totally helpless in that situation. You have choices.
It totally is empowering. You don't have to invite them in. You don't have to talk to them. And you definitely don't have to agree to anything right then and there.
That reminds me of something else Lori talks about. Getting information from the debt collector and staying calm. Like, instead of getting defensive or whatever, you kind of flip the script and start asking them questions. What's the strategy there? It does seem a little counterintuitive, right? Like, if a debt collector's coming at me all aggressive, my instinct is definitely not to be all, oh, hey there, what's your name again? So I'm really curious, what is the strategy behind that?
Well, think of it this way. When you take charge of the conversation and start asking them the questions, their name, the company they work for, their contact information, you're shifting the power dynamic. You're disrupting their whole game plan.
So they're expecting you to be flustered, and then you throw them a curveball.
Right. And it forces them to justify what they're doing. They're on the spot now instead of you. And that little pause while they're trying to figure out how to respond, that's valuable time. It gives you a chance to gather your thoughts, take a breath, and remind yourself, hey, I'm not powerless here.
It's about so much more than just getting their info so you can maybe report them later, right? It's about taking back some of that control in the moment.
Exactly. And the thing is, a legitimate creditor, they'll give you that information without hesitation. But if the person on the other end starts getting flustered or dodging your questions, ooh, that's a red flag right there. And it actually connects to another point Lori made that I think is so smart, the power of stalling.
You mean like if they call and you're not in a good headspace or you don't have all the info in front of you, it's okay to just say, I need to check my records, or can you call back later? I can't talk right now.
Exactly. You are never obligated to make a decision right that second. In fact, it's almost always better if you don't. Give yourself time to get organized. Read through the original documents, whatever you need. You could even use that time to contact a debt counselor or something, someone who can really explain your options. Remember, you have the right to fully understand your situation before you agree to anything.
I'm starting to see a theme here. Knowledge is power, right? The more you know about your rights when it comes to debt collection, the less scary it feels.
That's exactly it. When you understand the laws in your area, what collectors can and can't do, and you have a plan for how you're going to respond. Well, now you're in a much stronger position, mentally and emotionally. You're not just reacting to their tactics, you're in control. And remember, you don't have to go through this alone. There are people and organizations that can help you.
Absolutely. So let's talk resources. Where can people go for help if they're dealing with debt collectors, or even if they just want to be more informed?
There are tons of great resources out there, but a good place to start is your local consumer protection agency or legal aid societies. They often have free services or advice. And there are tons of really great nonprofits that specialize in credit counseling, and they can usually help you understand your rights with debt collectors too.
Great. So to kind of bring it all together, if we only remember a few things from Lori's advice, it should be this. 1, don't panic. It's easy to get overwhelmed in the moment, but take a deep breath and remember you have rights. 2, get informed. The more you know about debt collection laws, the better. And 3, don't be afraid to stall for time or even to just hang up and call for backup if you need it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And one more thing I thought was really interesting. Lori mentioned that if you're dealing with constant harassment where you think a debt collector is using really shady tactics, it might be a good idea to record the calls if it's legal where you live.
That's such a good point. Documentation is so important in these situations. Well, we covered a lot today, and I definitely feel better equipped to handle those kinds of calls in the future. But it does make you think about the bigger picture, doesn't it? Like, why is debt collection such a predatory industry in many cases? What is it about our relationship with debt as a society that allows these tactics to flourish? Maybe that's a topic for another deep dive sometime.
I'd say so. It's a complex issue for sure.
Yeah.
But these are the kinds of conversations we need to be having. The more we talk about it, the more empowered people will become to protect themselves.